A form of cultured cell, known as a HeLa cell, is at the centre of a lawsuit that's being brought against a large scientific company that uses these cells. HeLa cells are named after the person they were collected from originally, Henrietta Lacks. They're an immortal cell line that grows continuously in the culture dish. This means that cells that exist today stem directly from Henrietta Lacks' original cell sample, which was taken back in 1951. The use of these cells today raises ethical questions because Henrietta Lacks didn't give consent for them to be collected or used at the time. The case has been filed based on the fact that the company in question has continued to reproduce and to sell HeLa cells for monetary gain since, which the Lacks family have not received a share of. Cameron Voicey caught up with the story, speaking with non-practising barrister Rosalind English.
Henrietta Lacks was a young black woman who lived in the States in the 50s. And the reason why I mentioned that she was black was that in those days there was still segregation in the States. So she was on a black ward in the Johns Hopkins Hospital. She went to hospital because she said that she had what she described as a knot in her belly. And they did in fact find on investigation that she had a tumor on her cervix. They took some tissue from the tumor to investigate it further. Henrietta Lacks subsequently, very sadly, died in hospital. This was a very brutal and fast-moving kind of cervical cancer.
What are the importance of these cells?
So back in 1951, efforts had been made to preserve human cells outside the body for research purposes, but these efforts always failed because the cells quickly died. But because poor Henrietta Lacks' cancer was so vicious, the cells that came from her tissue sample reproduced and replicated like crazy in a petri dish. So to the researchers and the scientists involved, this was just a massive gift because they didn't have to make any particular efforts to preserve the cell line. So it was of tremendous use to science. And over the last decades, her line of cells have touched almost every aspect of medicine. They formed the basis of the polio vaccine. They have helped with research into infertility, and they were even involved in early efforts to find a vaccine against COVID-19.
What are the problems that the use of these cells raises ethically?
Well, this is a very difficult area in terms of ethics and indeed law, because in principle, if you just look at the Henrietta Lacks story and indeed the case that her estate is taking, it looks on the face of it that her tissue was taken from her whilst she was alive without her consent and kept after her death without any compensation to her family. So these are Henrietta Lacks' own cells that are serving the pharmaceutical companies and indeed medicine to great profit and benefit to medicine. Should the family get compensation? Well, that unfortunately is a legal question, and the answer is not at all easy.
So if Henrietta Lacks did not give consent for the use of these cells, why not just use some perhaps similar cells for which consent has been given?
The answer is that probably is the case, that there are now plenty of cell lines all in laboratories all over the world that have been duly consented. But in fact, the HeLa line of cells are so widely spread that in order to stop using them, there'd be so many patents and products that would have to be thrown out of the window. It would do considerable damage to research and science. The need to get consent is a very difficult legal question because, in essence, in the States, as well as the United Kingdom, there is no concept of property in one's own body. Yes, I can donate one of my kidneys, but we do not own those body parts. It is still legal to use the Henrietta Lacks kind of cell, even without her consent. So it's very difficult to build a legal case when there's no settled law of property in body parts.
Rosalind English, she's the co-editor of the UK Human Rights blog, and she's also the presenter of LawPod UK.